Number 10. The Black Volga. The Black Volga is an urban legend that has captivated audiences for decades. The legend refers to a mysterious black or red GA721 or GA724 car that was allegedly used to abduct and murder people in the 1960s and 70s in countries like Poland, Romania, Hungary, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Greece, and Mongolia. The car is described as having white wheel rims, white curtains, or other white elements, which only adds to its eerie appearance. According to different versions of the legend, the car was driven by various nefarious characters. These included communist secret police, Russian mafia, and Satanists. And then there are some who say Satan himself drove it. The motives for the abductions and murders vary as well, with some versions stating that the victims were kidnapped and murdered for their blood, which was supposedly used as a cure for rich Westerners or Arabs suffering from leukemia. The legend of the Black Volga has become so ingrained in popular culture that it has spawned variations such as the car having horns instead of wing mirrors, the number 666 on the license plate, and even the driver asking for the time and killing the person who approaches the car to answer this question. But luckily, there's also an effective defense method for this. So they say whenever the driver of the Volga asks what time is it, you should just answer it's God's time. Then the car would just quickly vanish. Number 9. The Felixstowe Fire Demon. The Felixstowe Fire Demon sighting was an extraterrestrial sighting that took place in Felixstowe, England in 1965. The group that saw it consisted of the driver, 25-year-old Jeffrey Maskey, and his passengers, Mavis Fordyce and Michael Johnson. They were driving along an isolated tree-lined avenue when they decided to pull over to preserve gas. As they engaged in conversation, Johnson suddenly opened the car door and walked out into the murky night. Fordyce and Maskey exchanged perplexed glances as their companion vanished into the darkness, but simply assumed he had gone to use the bathroom in the woods. Just moments after Johnson disappeared, Fordyce and Maskey heard a strange high-pitched humming sound. Fordyce grew anxious as the disconcerting sound became louder, and Maskey leaned out the window to try and find the origin of the noise. It was then that he saw an oval-shaped orange object suspended in the sky above his car. Maskey estimated that the UFO was about 6 foot wide, and both he and Fordyce claimed that it was glowing so brightly that it glowed the surrounding countryside in an eerie orange glow. The following day, Johnson recovered his senses and told his friends and doctors of his harrowing encounter with an alien entity in the woods. He claimed that when he abruptly got out of the car the night before, he was compelled to do so by an unknown force, which insisted that he go into the woods. Johnson walked into the dark forest where he encountered a humanoid being with large sloping eyes that were glowing in the darkness. He also claimed that the creature was engulfed by an orange flame, and it was at that point that he just blacked out. Number 8. The Blood Countess. Dubbed the most prolific female murderer by Guinness World Records, Countess Elizabeth Bathory was infamous for her dark, gruesome truth. Born into a noble Hungarian family in 1560 or 1561, they don't really know the date, Bathory descended from multiple noble lineages and included the King of Poland and the Prince of Transylvania among her relatives. It is thought that her parents were both close relatives, and that this may have been the source of a number of health problems that she experienced as a child, such as severe epileptic seizures. After she got married at 15 years old with Ferenc Nadasti, rumors began to circulate about her atrocities. Between 1602 and 1604, the rumors about Bathory's crimes became impossible for the authorities to ignore. Lutheran minister Istvan Magyari made complaints about her both publicly and at the court in Vienna, but it took until 1610 for King Matthias II to assign 2 notaries, Andras Keresturi and Moses Reiki, to collect evidence on the charges made against her. The evidence that was collected revealed that the girls as young as 10 were being abducted by Bathory, beaten severely, and mutilated before freezing or starving to death. Some girls were allegedly burned with hot tongs, and others had parts of their face bitten off. As a result, Bathory was arrested and imprisoned for life, where she died 4 years later. The true story of Bathory is a complex and disturbing tale of a woman who committed horrific crimes against innocent girls. And while the vampire and blood-bathing legends may make for a sensational story, the truth is terrifying on its own. Number 7. The Black Monk of Pontefract. The Black Monk of Pontefract is a legend that has been passed down through history, detailing a supposed poltergeist haunting that took place in the late 1960s and early 70s in a home in the town of Pontefract, England. The home belonged to a family by the name of Pritchard, who claimed to have experienced a series of terrifying and inexplicable disturbances from the moment they moved in. The disturbances began with small occurrences such as a gust of cold wind and a strange white powder falling from the air. However, as time went on, the disturbances became increasingly intense intense and more terrifying. Puddles of water began appearing on the kitchen floor, and even a plumber was unable to offer an explanation for this. The family reported hearing loud crashing sounds and seeing objects move or disappear, and they even claimed that a heavy chest of drawers began to sway on its own. The disturbances were so intense that at one point, the family was forced to flee the home and sleep at a neighbor's house out of fear alone. Even when they returned, the disturbances continued, with the family's daughter Diane being thrown from her bed and dragged up the stairs by an invisible force. The family even claimed that after they sprinkled holy water across the home, the poltergeist responded by painting upside down crosses on the living room walls and doors and destroying crucifixes wherever they were. The Pritchards also claimed that a black cloak figure with a cowl over its head appeared over their bed, and they attributed this to the poltergeist, but it is not confirmed. Number 6, the Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack is a legendary figure from Victorian England who is said to be a fire-breathing devil man who could jump unnaturally high. The legend of Spring-Heeled Jack first started to appear in 1837, where residents of a London neighborhood began to report bizarre attacks from a figure described as a ghost, imp, or devil in the shape of a large white bull. The figure mainly targeted women, ringing their doorbells, and when they answered, it would ravage their clothes with its claws. Other sightings have him simply ambushing people who were out walking. The figure was also described as wearing red shoes or armor, and despite the skepticism from the press, the legend of the Spring-Heeled Jack continued to grow. It grew so much that the Lord Mayor of London even addressed the growing number of stories, bringing up the theory that the attacks were perpetuated by a group of wealthy individuals. Some believe that it was a group of wealthy men dressing up and scaring people on a bet. However, the true nature of Spring-Heeled Jack still remains a mystery, and as of today, there is no evidence of what this person may have been. In the hump of our list, we have the Beast of Gévaudan. In the 1760s, a terrifying creature known as the Beast began killing nearly 300 people in a remote region of south-central France called the Gévaudan. The Beast was thought to be a huge animal, but its reputation grew to be much more sinister. Reports stated that it preferred attacking women and children, and that it would remove the victim's head and drink all of their blood, leaving nothing behind but a pile of bones. Illustrators had a field day representing the Beast, with many emphasizing its goriness and preference for found victims. The attacks in Gévaudan created widespread fear, to the point that King Louis intervened, offering a reward for its capture. Despite the efforts of hunters, a dragoon captain, and even professional wolf stalkers, the Beast was not captured until September 1765 by Francois Antoine. And even then, the attacks continued. Supernatural explanations of the attack continued to circulate, with some believing it to be the work of werewolves, but most historians now agree that the Gévaudan Beast was most likely a pack of large wolves. The legend of the Beast still holds a certain level of creep factor, making it a truly terrifying urban legend from France. Number 4, the Caves of Death. I mean, the name says it all, but if you happen to be in Scotland and want to try something daring, then maybe go try out the Caves of Death. Archaeologists discovered this not too long ago and found that this was an ancient location used for human sacrifice, execution, and body disposal. So pretty much a good place all in all. Radiocarbon dating found masses of dismembered body parts, including children's head left on poles in front of the cave's entrance, which were left there 3,200 years ago. It's said that they did this because they treated this place as a shrine where they would leave those who passed away, wait for them to decompose, then collect the bones. Number 3, the Queen of Spades. Basically the Russian version of Bloody Mary. This supernatural being is said to grant wishes to anyone who suffers her, but at a price, of course. As the Joker once said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. To summon her, similar to Bloody Mary, you need to go in a dark room with a mirror and light a candle in front of it. Once you have that set up, you need to place a Queen of Hearts playing card right up against the mirror. You now need to draw a door with some stairs on the mirror. Now in the front of the mirror, you need to clear your mind and close your eyes and say Queen of Spades 3 times. While you're saying your name, visualize the queen opening the door and walking down the stairs from the lipstick drawing. This part is where many people report hearing evil laughter just before they encountered the Queen of Spades. Once she appears, you need to hold your candle and say your wish out loud. Once you're done, blow out your candle. Because if you don't, her spirit may come out through the window and stay in our world. Basically, chanting a name in a mirror doesn't have good implications in any culture. Number 2, the Chernobyl Black Bird. Just a few days before the infamous Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, many workers at the plant reported seeing a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings. This humanoid creature was given the name Black Bird of Chernobyl, and despite the fact that it had no head, it had piercing red eyes that would send chills to the spine of anyone caught looking. Before the nuclear disaster, workers claimed to have been plagued by terrifying dreams and many instances of bad luck. Fast forward to the day of the disaster, and now workers have reported seeing a large black bird-like creature with a 40-foot wingspan flying through the smoke of Chernobyl. Many people believe these creatures to be a bad omen since they are shown around history to appear before tragic events. Now this creature is nowhere to be found in the area, which makes many wondering what was truly haunting them at this famous nuclear plant. Number 1. The London Fog. On December 4th, 1952, smog began to cover all of London. The smog was present for 5 whole days and ended up leading to the passing of at least 4,000 people. On a regular Tuesday afternoon, a high-pressure air mass stalled over Thames River Valley. Suddenly, cold air came in from the west side and the air in London became trapped. The problem worsened by the low temperatures, which caused people living there to burn extra coal in their surfaces to keep warm. The smoke, soot, and sulfur dioxide from the area's industries, along with the stuff from cars and consumer energy usage, caused heavy smog to smother the entire city. By the morning of December 5th, it was visible across hundreds of square miles. It became so thick and dense that by December 7th, there was no sunlight and visibility was down to only 5 yards in many places. Eventually, all transportation came to a halt, but not before the smog caused several train accidents, including a collision between 2 trains near the London Bridge. However, that wasn't the worst thing. The worst effect of the smog was the respiratory distress it caused in us humans and animals, including difficulty breathing and many people vomiting. A high number of people in the area, numbering in the thousands, passed away in their sleep that weekend alone. Now, it's a little crazy to me that all this happened and so many people ended up losing their lives, but I guess you can't really control Mother Nature when it comes down to stuff like this. At a number 10 spot, we have the Chislehurst Caves. This large cave in England spans 22 miles of passageways split into 3 distinct sections named Saxon, Druid, and Roman. They all branch out and then end up linking one another soon after. In World War II, many British civilians would use this cave to hide from the bombings, but these caves date way further back than that, because they date all the way in 1250, where there are written reports of mining in these caves. Throughout history, the cave was also used as a cemetery to keep the dead, which is why many people believe it is haunted. People regularly report hearing screams, murmurs, children giggling, and footsteps echoing from deep within the cave. Locals even claim that the reports are from the spirits who passed away in the cave, trying to let the living know of the eternal suffering. At a number 9 spot, we have London Fog. On December 4th in 1952, smog began to cover all of London. The smog was present for 5 whole days and ended up leading to the passing of at least 4,000 people. On a regular Thursday afternoon, a high-pressure air mass stalled over the Thames River Valley. Suddenly, cold air came in from the west side and the air in London became trapped. The problem worsened by the low temperatures, which caused people living there to burn extra coal in their furnaces to keep warm. The smoke, soot, and sulfur dioxide from the area's industries, along with the stuff from the cars and consumer energy usage, caused heavy smog to smother the whole entire city. By the morning of December 5th, it was visible across hundreds of square miles. It became so thick and dense that by December 7th, there was no sunlight and visibility was only down to 5 yards in many places. Eventually, all transportation came to a halt, but not before the smog caused several train accidents, including a collision between 2 trains near the London Bridge. However, that wasn't the worst thing. The worst effect of the smog was the respiratory distress it caused in humans and animals, including difficulty breathing and a lot of people vomiting. A high number of people in the area, numbering all the way in the thousands, passed away in their sleep that weekend. Now, it's a little crazy to me that all this happened and so many people ended up losing their lives. Hopefully, we can learn from this. At number 8 spot, we have Maternity Hospital. This building was constructed at the end of the 18th century on the territory of the hospital for participants in the Patriotic War of 1812 against the French army of Napoleon, and initially it was a general district hospital. It became a maternity hospital in the second half of the 20th century and was closed for reconstruction in 2009. The plan of this 2-story building resembles this Russian letter. The ceilings are more than 5 meters high, and in spite of the fact that the building is totally abandoned, it still has central heating and is rather clean. Bloggers and people passionate about abandoned sites visit it on a regular daily basis. The hospital is situated in the region of Vladimir, which is 186 kilometers to the east of Moscow. At number 7 spot, we have the Knights Templar curse. The Knight Templar was a Christian military order with the purpose to protect pilgrims in the Holy Land during the Crusade period. They had the power and the money. Philip IV from France sought to seize their wealth and power. So in a raid, Grand Master of the Templars, Jacques de Molay, was arrested along with his Templar comrades, being charged with heresy. Soon after, King Philip pressured Pope Clement V and made him agree to the reasoning. The Pope would issue a bill that made all Christian kings able to seize Templar property which destroyed the Templar Order, and Jacques de Molay was sentenced to death. Jacques, while burning on the stake, said, quote, "France will remember our last moments. We die innocent. And you, O Philip, my king, I pardon you. But my forgiveness is in vain, for your life is condemned at the tribunal of God. Within a year I shall await you also." Only 3 days later, Pope Clement would die in agony, and when he was cremated, the fire burned down the church as well. Then Philip IV died at the end of the year and died in great misery and in great pain. At number 6 spot, we have Scylla. This is a monster feared for her brutality. Scylla is a very interesting ocean creature in Greek mythology. She is usually beside the great whirlpool Cerberus and is a huge danger to those who wish to pass her waters. Out of all creatures in Greek mythology, her destruction ranks the highest, no questions asked. But she wasn't always this horrendous monster. In one depiction, she was a beautiful maiden and the fisherman turned god of the sea, Glaucus, fell in love with her. She wasn't interested at all because of his fishy tail, so he turned to Circe to ask for a potion to change her mind. However, Circe loved him and tried to convince him to forget about Scylla. Not wanting to punish the man she loved, Circe decided Scylla would suffer for her humiliation. Scylla was then transformed into a monster which had 6 serpentine-like heads, as well as the sounds of hounds spouting from her sides. There is no point in trying to escape her, cause you just can't. She is too powerful. All people who try to pass her are warned, quote, "Sail past, do not engage in a fight, as you will simply not win." In the hump of our list, we have real werewolves. You might think of werewolf stories as something only told for fun around the campfire, but that wasn't always the case. People truly believed in the existence of these creatures. In fact, in the 16th and 17th century in Europe, werewolf trials accompanied witch trials. It's even more surprising to note that the amount of people who confessed to being werewolves. Some were likely tortured into confession, but others believed that they were actually real werewolves. The idea that a human could transform into animal was quite popular, and people thought they could make a deal with the devil in order to gain that power. In the 1500s, a French tailor was convicted of luring in, torturing, and slaying his victims before cooking and having them for dinner. He was also accused of turning into a werewolf to terrorize a town at night. Although there are no exact victim count, he was believed to have taken dozens of lives. The tailor made no attempt to defend himself. Instead, he cursed until his last breath, which he burned at the stake. The court was apparently so shocked by his evil acts that the court burned the documents as well. At number 4 spot, we have the Chernobyl black bird. Just a few days before the infamous Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, many workers at the plant reported seeing a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings. This humanoid creature was given the name Black Bird of Chernobyl, and despite the fact that it had no head, it had piercing red eyes, would send chills to the spines of anyone caught looking at it. Before the disaster, workers claimed to have been plagued by terrifying dreams and many instances of bad luck. Fast forward to the day of the disaster, and now workers have reported seeing the large black bird-like creature with a 40-foot wingspan flying through the smoke of Chernobyl. Many people believe these creatures to be a bad omen since they are shown around history to appear before tragic events. Now this creature is nowhere to be found in the area, which makes me wonder what was truly haunting them at the famous nuclear plant. At number 3 spot, we have sirens. Originating from Greek mythology, sirens are creatures with enchanting musical voices that lure sailors and unsuspecting people to their doom. They were in fact the daughters of the river god Achilles and a muse. Sometimes they're depicted as something similar to mermaids, but in more classical depictions they had wings. The wings were given to them by Zeus's daughter Persephone after Hades kidnapped her and took her to the underworld. She gave the sirens wings to help locate her, but in the oceans the sirens would sing a song so beautiful that it would lure any kind of man to jump off the boat and swim until the sirens would just pull them down under and drown them. Number 2 spot, with the Nuckelavee. The Nuckelavee is a creature from the Orkney Islands and is considered a Scottish monster of Scandinavian and Celtic mythology. The Nuckelavee enjoys inflicting pain, tainting crops, and driving people from their homes. It appears as a horse with the torso of a man upon his back, standing 9 feet tall with long drapey arms attached to the rider, and it looks as though it had been skinned alive with only the muscles exposed. It was known as the creature of the sea that had come onto land just to wreak havoc. Its breath alone caused crops to wilt and even sicken cattle with diseases. At a number 1 spot, we have the Caves of Death. I mean, the name says it all. But if you happen to be in Scotland and you want to try something daring, then try out the Caves of Death. Archaeologists discovered this not too long ago and found that this was an ancient location used for human sacrifice, execution, and body disposal. Radiocarbon dating found mass of dismembered body parts, including children's heads left on poles in front of the cave's entrance, which were left there over 3,000 years ago. It's said they did this because they treated this place as a shrine where they would leave those who passed away, wait for them to decompose, and then collect the bones. At a number 10 spot, we have the Headless Nun. It all began during the mid-18th century struggle between the Acadians and the British. In an effort to fend off the British, a French fort was constructed at a cove located in a place known today as French Fort Cove in New Brunswick. Among the Acadians transported to this location was a nun known as Sister Mary. Sister Mary was born in France and requested of her superiors that she be sent to Canada to help the Acadians. She was deeply devoted to the care of the ill and despaired for their well-being. Sister Marie was in charge of a fund that was set up to assist the needs of the families, and it is said that she buried the money for safekeeping. One fateful night, while returning from assisting a very ill person, Sister Mary was attacked by an unknown person or persons. They demanded that she reveal the location of the buried money. Her unwillingness to cooperate with the attackers resulted in Sister Mary being beaten, and her head was severed from her body. The head was never found, hence the Headless Nun. Sister Marie's body was then returned to France, but her spirit remained here, unable to rest until her head was buried with her body. Then for years after this incident, late night visitors to the area have reported being approached by Sister Marie's spirit asking where her head is. Some say she asked them to help find her head, while others claim that she has found it and carries it in her arms, in which she just asks them to bury it with her body. If you're brave enough to visit the area, be sure to bring a friend, as it's said that you should never visit the Headless Nun alone. Number 9, the Baldoon Mystery. The Baldoon Mystery takes place in the Baldoon settlement near present-day Wallaceburg in southern Ontario. This is where a group of Scottish families settled but faced many difficulties due to the swampy land and disease that was roaming the area. Among the original settlers, there was the MacDonald family, who showed much struggle beginning in 1829. According to accounts, this first incident happened when poles from the roof structure of the barn began to topple towards the ground, sending these deadly wooden daggers flying and sticking out of the ground. No probable source for the incident was ever found, and the poles were installed in such a way that they couldn't easily come loose, leaving the possibility of an unseen force with ill intent. As the strange occurrences continued to plague the farm, unexplained sounds would be heard from the MacDonald family at all hours of the day and night. The family would often hear the sounds of footsteps throughout the house, but especially in the kitchen, which sounded like the rhythmic marching of many men preparing for war. But when the family went to investigate, the noises would abruptly stop, leaving no explanation for them. Another disturbing incident involved one of their children, a baby sitting in a wooden cradle, which suddenly started to rock violently from side to side, despite the efforts of 3 men there to stop it. And it didn't stop there. Rocks were thrown in the exterior of their home each and every single day, which would sometimes shatter windows. As well, fires would show up around the property as if someone was trying to burn down the place, but they would be so random that they didn't even look like it was intentional. They would attribute the hauntings to a witch who cursed the home and the land, and would later enlist the aid of a woman who told them to make a bullet out of silver and shoot a black feathered goose, which would ultimately end the curse. After doing just that, they no longer had any more disturbances, and we can say that the curse was finally lifted. Number 8, Oak Island. The Oak Island Mystery is a series of stories explaining about a buried treasure and unexplained objects that have been found on or near Oak Island in Nova Scotia. Theories about the artifacts present on the island range from pirate treasure to Shakespearean manuscripts to the Holy Grail or even the Ark of the Covenant. Various items have surfaced over the years that were found on the island, some of which have since been carbon dated and found to be hundreds of years old. However, no significant main treasure site has been found there. The site consists of digs by numerous individuals and groups of people, and the original shaft, known as the Money Pit, was dug by early explorers. A curse on the treasure is said to have originated more than a century ago, stating that 7 men will die in the search for the treasure before it is found, and so far there's been 6 deaths confirmed, with the most recent one coming from 2014. So we're really just waiting for the 7th one. Doesn't that sound terrible? Attempts to remove the water from the Money Pit have been unsuccessful, and theories about an elaborate drainage system from the ocean beaches to the pit have been proposed. However, a scientific study conducted by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in 1995 concluded that the flooding was caused by a natural interaction between the island's freshwater lens and tidal pressures in the underlying geology, refuting the man-made tunnel theory. Regardless, Oak Island is a mystery that we may never be able to solve unless someone is willing to risk their life just so we can get that 7th death. Again, that sounds absolutely terrible. Number 7. Pitt Lake's Lost Gold Mine. Pitt Lake's Lost Gold Mine is a legendary lost mine said to be near Pitt Lake, British Columbia. The supposed wealth has held the imagination of people worldwide for more than a century. The story of Pitt Lake gold begins in 1858, the year of the Fraser Canyon Gold Rush, where a number of maps were published in San Francisco promoting the goldfields of British Columbia. The mysterious riches are known as the Sloomich's Lost Mine or the Lost Creek Mine. Ever since the years of the Fraser Canyon Gold Mine, prospectors and adventurers have been looking for the mine, and gold rush rumors have evolved into legends, repeated and enriched over time. The mine was said to be located on the north side of Pitt Lake, where an Indian brought, quote, a good prospect of gold, which he states he found in a little stream on the north side of Pitt Lake, to New Westminster, creating great excitement in the city. Despite many expeditions to find the mine, it remains a legend with many different variations of the story. Some say that it was found by a Native American, while others say a white man named Walter Jackson, who before he died wrote a letter to a friend describing the location of the mine and the treasure, describing it as yellow with gold and millions practically at the surface. Even after a century of searching, the mine remains undiscovered, which just adds more to its allure and its overall mystique. In the hump of our list, we have the ghost ship of Northumberland Strait. The ghost ship of Northumberland Strait is a legend steeped in centuries of Canadian ghost lore. According to the legend, the ghost ship is a beautiful schooner with 3 or 4 masts, all adorned with pure white sails. This ship sails ablaze within the Northumberland Strait, which is a body of water that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. The legend dates back at least 200 years, and it is said that the ship appears before a northeast wind and is a forewarning of an extreme storm. Over the years, there have been numerous sightings of this ghost ship, with people describing the distinctive outlines of the ship's mast and phantom crew members climbing them before the vessel supposedly either completely burns, sinks, or just vanishes out of thin air. In 1900, a group of sailors boarded a small rowboat in Charlottetown Harbor and raced towards the phantom ship in order to rescue the crew, only to have the ship vanish. Then in January 2008, a 17-year-old claimed to have seen the legendary phantom ship in Tatamaguchi Bay, describing it as a bright white and gold ship. While the legend of the ghost ship has captivated the imagination of many, some have offered natural explanations for the phenomenon. In 1905, a New Brunswick scientist proposed that the legend may have arisen due to the natural electrical phenomenon known as St. Elmo's fire that has been subject to the interpretation as the flaming rigging of a ship. Other explanations suggest that the illusion may have been created by a bank of fog, which is just reflecting moonlight. But really, what do you guys think about it? In the hump of our list, we have the La Chasse Galerie. La Chasse Galerie, also known as the Bewitched Canoe or the Flying Canoe, is a popular French-Canadian tale of lumberjacks from camps working around the river of Gatineau who make a deal with the devil. The tale has roots in a French legend about a rich nobleman named Galerie who loved to hunt so much that he refused to attend the Sunday Mass. As punishment, he was condemned to fly forever through the night skies, chased by galloping horses and howling wolves. When French settlers arrived in Canada, they swapped stories with the natives, and the tale of Galerie was combined with a First Nations legend about a flying canoe. The story goes that after a night of heavy drinking on New Year's Eve, a group of voyagers yearned to visit their sweethearts who were 100 leagues or 500 kilometers away. The only way to make such a long journey and be back in time for work the next morning is to run the Chasse Galerie, which means making a pact with the devil so that their canoe can travel through the air to make their destination quickly. However, the travelers must not mention God's name or touch the cross of any church steeple as they whisk by in the flying canoe, or else the devil will take their souls. The men promise not to touch another drop of rum and take their places in the canoe, which begins to rise off the ground. They start to paddle and soon pass over the frozen Gatineau River, many villages, and even the lights of Montreal. They eventually touch down near a house where New Year's Eve festivities are in full swing, and they finally spend time with their sweethearts and still manage to get back in the morning. Although this is a sweet idea, I don't know if I would make a deal with the devil in order to just get to a destination faster. Number 4, the legend of Rose La Tulip. The story of Rose La Tulip is a French-Canadian legend that has been passed down for centuries. This eerie tale tells the story of a young and carefree girl named Rose La Tulip who loved nothing more than just to dance. On the night of Mardi Gras, a mysterious stranger appeared at the La Tulip house and asked to dance with Rose. Without hesitation, Rose accepted the offer and danced with the stranger until the stroke of midnight. However, as the clock struck 12, the stranger revealed his true identity as the devil. According to some variations of the legend, the devil disappeared into the night, taking Rose with him to eternal damnation in hell. Others claim that the priest of the village intervened, saving Rose from the devil's grasp. Regardless of the outcome, the legend says that Rose would later enter a convent and die a few years after. This legend is one of the many examples in French-Canadian folklore of girls dancing with the devil. These stories have been used as a cautionary tale for young girls, warning them of the dangers of dancing with strangers, particularly during Lent or on Sundays. The legend of Rose the Tulip is a chilling reminder of the consequences of succumbing to temptation and the dangers that can lurk in the shadows, even on the happiest of occasions. Number 3, the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel. The Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel has been supposedly haunted since 1888. One of the most famous ghosts seen at the hotel is the Ghost Bride, who is either seen on the main staircase or in the hotel's ballroom. The Ghost Bride's story goes that on her wedding day, something startled her so bad and caused her to slip and fall. Some say that her heel got caught in her dress, or that her dress just got caught in a candle's flame and went up and engulfed her. Whichever story is true or not, what is known is that she passed away on that very staircase. Ever since, hotel staff and visitors claim to have seen the veiled figure walking up and down the stairs every single day. And on the other hand, others claim seeing her in the ballroom dancing since she has never had the chance to dance with her husband. Man, this has to be one of the worst wedding disasters ever. Number 2, the Old Finch Avenue Bridge. The Old Finch Avenue Bridge is a Bailey bridge in Toronto that dates back to late October 1954. Ever since it was built, residents in the town of Scarborough have claimed it to be the most haunted bridge in the country. The most common legend about the bridge involves the disembodied screams of a young girl. The story goes that as you walk over the bridge at night, you may be greeted by shrill screams from beyond. There are variations of the legend, each providing different suggestions about how you can prompt the noises. Some say you simply need to be passing over the bridge at the right time of night, just as the sky is darkest. Others suggest that you should go to the center of the bridge and start singing the song Happy Birthday. A few people have remarked that you should yell Happy Birthday Candy out into the darkness. However you choose to conjure up the potential spirit, the results are often the same, a high-pitched and blood-curdling shriek. But their experiences don't stop there. Pedestrians gathering up the strength to venture onto this bridge have heard footsteps, whispers, and strange noises. Some people have even reported feeling a cold, eerie presence while walking on this bridge, and this is why many people try to avoid this bridge at all costs to this day. Number 1, Mussy. The legend of Mussy, the mysterious creature said to reside in Muskrat Lake in Ontario, has captivated locals and visitors for decades. Described as anything from a walrus to a three-eyed Loch Ness monster creature, the origins of the legend are said to date back to 1916, and some even claim that it was mentioned by Canadian pioneer Samuel de Champlain in the early 17th century. Mussy's name is a diminutive form of the name of its reported location, which is a large and deep lake near the village of Cobden. The lake is also home to another paranormal phenomenon, where local legends say that an Atomic Energy of Canada bus driver saw an extraterrestrial spacecraft landing on a spot atop a hill and leaving here. There is indeed a dark colored circular outline on this hill where grass does not grow, with no widely accepted cause. Residents have variously described Mussy's physical appearance as a walrus, a sturgeon, or another fish, or even a Loch Ness monster with 3 eyes with sharper teeth. Some claim that a single very old Mussy or a member of its species arrived in the area, then covered by the ocean about 10,000 years ago, and that glaciers and later solid land masses built around it, forming the lake and trapping the creature in it. Despite several attempts to find concrete evidence of this creature, including a search by author Michael Braley and friend Deanna Bean using sonar technology, scientists have surveyed the area and just found nothing. However, the definitive non-existence of a Mussy-like creature is difficult to establish because some of the trenches in Muskrat Lake extend over 600 meters. So that's just food for thought when you're there. At our number 10 spot, we have Pendle Hill. The trials of the Pendle witches are among the most famous witch trials in English history and some of the best recorded of the 17th century. The 12 accused witches lived in the same area surrounding Pendle Hill in Lancashire. They were charged with the murders of 10 people by the use of witchcraft. Basically, the majority of these witches were a part of 2 major families notorious for hating one another. And as many witch trials went, someone accused another, they accused this person blamed this person, now everyone is being accused. It wasn't until the villages were dying by means unnatural when the townsfolk decided to condemn these people as witches and execute them. 10 of the 13 were hung, with many having no chance to defend themselves. Nowadays, people claim the ghosts of the witches are still in the area, with many feeling immense anger when visiting the grounds. At our number 9 spot, we have Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Blackpool Pleasure Beach is an amusement park on Blackpool's South Shore. There's specific rides at this park that is supposedly haunted, and that is the Ghost Train, which was built in 1936 with the claim of being the world's most haunted ghost train. Seems like it lives up to its name because visitors say that this ride is haunted by the ghost of Cloggy. Then in 2004, the ride was investigated by paranormal investigators, and they claimed that it had had something dark behind it. Cloggy was said to be a former member of staff, but after his passing, it seems like he's still devoted to his role. Guest claims he resides in the end room of the ride where you see these skeletons riding bikes. Sometimes he'll be in one of the bikes greeting you. At number 8 spot, we have Raham Hall. Raham Hall is a country house built back in the 1600s, and after nearly 400 years, it stands strong to this day, but it has a dark history attached to it as well. The story goes that in the 1700s, Lady Dorothy Walpole of Raham Hall was met with an unfortunate fate. She was accused of adultery and was ordered to confine her life within the walls of the home. She would eventually pass away from smallpox, but this was by far the last time we would see from her. These eerie photos capture the infamous Brown Lady of Raham Hall as she descended down a staircase in the building. She's called the Brown Lady because every time visitors claim to see her, she's wearing a brown brocade dress. The first documented sighting of Lady Dorothy occurred back in 1835. A visitor said he saw a shadowy woman in an old-fashioned brown dress with hollow sockets for eyes. Nowadays, she is seen watching guests as they explore the building, but in only rare cases she will attempt to grab unsuspecting people. At our number 7 spot, we have the Hampton Court Palace. The Hampton Court Palace was built in 1514, but it wasn't until 1528 where King Henry VIII lived there with his 6 wives. But having that many wives proved detrimental in the afterlife, as many people suspect the palace to be haunted by the ghosts of his ex-wives and many others who lost their life at the palace. Some of Henry's wives are spotted at the palace, including his 3rd wife, Jane Seymour, who tragically passed away in the palace after giving birth. She is said to be walking the corridors holding a lit candle and is usually close to where she passed away giving birth. Another one is his 5th wife, Catherine Howard, who was accused of adultery then dragged into what is known now as the Haunted Gallery. She was later executed in the Tower of London, but it's said that her screams are heard in the gallery at late nights when no one is around. Then in more recent times, CCTV footage caught a supposed ghost at the Hampton Palace. For 3 nights in a row, cameras recorded the exact same fire escape door opening and closing, but on the 2nd night, a slender cloaked figure peeked out of it, and here it is. At number 6 spot, we have Whitby Abbey. Best known as an inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, Whitby Abbey has its own fair share of spooky happenings. These ruins, located in Yorkshire, are said to be home of one of the first monasteries, a place where Vikings ransacked, and also a place where Dracula supposedly visited in the form of a dog. In the late 1800s, King Henry VIII, remember the guy I mentioned with the 6 wives? Yeah, he lost a lot of possessions confiscated from this place. One particular story that pops up from this place involves a nun named Constance de Beverley. She supposedly fell in love with a handsome knight and broke her vow of chastity. When she got caught, she was bricked up alive in the dungeons of this place. Her screams were so loud that she could be heard for days, but now people claim to hear her painful screams and the sounds of her pleading for forgiveness. The area where she was bricked up was never uncovered, which makes many believe she was never fully laid to rest. At the hump of our list, we have the Chillingham Castle. This is deemed by people all around the world to be England's most haunted castle. Chillingham Castle was built all the way back in the 13th century, and for interesting facts, this is the place where King Edward I stayed at before defeating William Wallace, infamous for being the leader for the First War on Scotland's independence. Then over the years, this place has seen countless battles between English and Scots, so many lives were lost here around the castle. One of the most popular ghost stories within the castle involved the blue or radiant boy, who is seen in the castle's pink room and can be heard wailing his eyes out, and sometimes people would claim a boy wearing all blue approaching them before vanishing out of thin air. Another spirit is the ghost of Lady Berkeley, wife of Lord Grey. She was abandoned by her husband and left in the castle to perish. As well, you can hear her weeping as she roams the halls looking for her husband. Many guests report her when they hit a random cold spot in the building. I'm all about castles, but I really don't want to hear crying all day, so no thanks. At their number 4 spot, we have Borley Rectory. This house was famous for being described as the most haunted house in England by psychic researcher Harry Price. Built in 1862, the house was installed as a residence for the parish rector and was instantly the subject of local gossip. Even before the construction of the building, the area where it stands was said to be haunted by the ghost of a nun who many claimed as the Nun's Walk. According to lore, the nun fell in love with a monk in the area. Everything was fine until they got caught. The monk would be executed for his crimes and the nuns bricked up alive within the cellar walls. When the building was completed, the first owners reported unexplained footsteps and even the face of a nun staring at them from a distance. Another incident was when the first owner's adopted daughter was attacked by an evil presence after being trapped in that room. Following the incident, the family noticed bizarre marks on the wall looking as if the ghost contacting the wife. This is when an exorcism took place but failed after the reverend would be struck by rocks and stones. Eventually the house burned down in 1939 and now all that remains is the ruins of this haunted house. At a number 3 spot, we have Bolton's Bench. Located in Lyndhurst, England lies Bolton Bench, which is a grassy knoll know, great for taking walks, but before that, it was said that a dragon flew around the area. According to lore, a large dragon supposedly terrorized the village of Burstein before one brave knight, Sir Maurice de Berkeley, offered to assist. The knight waited patiently with his hounds in the goal of catching the dragon off guard, waiting to attack it when it emerged to grab its daily supply of milk. The knight and his hounds pursued the dragon as it fled after being ambushed. The Burstein dragon was finally slain outside of Lyndhurst, where it fell to its death and created the knoll now known as Bolton's Bench. Now yew trees stand atop the Bolton's Bench, but who knows, maybe you'll catch a glimpse of a dragon, or even better yet, the dragon bones might be lying just below you. At number 2 spot, we have Minsden Chapel. Minsden Chapel, located in the wooded area of Hertfordshire, dates back to the origins back in 14th century. Everything we talked about on this list is old, so what did you expect? Here lies a ruined chapel with a dark history associated with it. Reginald Hine was a local historian who researched into the chapel's history extensively. He did so much he ended up falling in love with the place altogether. It was during one of his visits in 1907 that his companion W.T. Latchmore photographed a phantom monk coming out of the ruins. Then after a few decades, Reginald took his own life from strange circumstances at a railway station. It's said that he calmly stepped in front of a train while in the midst of a conversation with one of his friends. At number 1 spot, we have the Tower of London. Since its creation in 1067 AD, the Tower of London has gone through a dark and bloody history. This tower harbors many ghosts, so focus up. In 1483, 2 young princes were murdered inside of the tower, which were discovered underneath a staircase 200 years later. Now guests claim to see the shadowy apparitions of 2 lost boys holding hands as they walk through the halls and floors of the tower. Another spirit is that of Anne Boyle, who was imprisoned and beheaded in the tower in 1536. Many guests claim to see a headless person pacing back and forth the tower at night. And then in 1864, a soldier guarding the tower apparently spotted the headless figure and attempted to stab it, but it's a ghost, so it just went right through it.